miles away.
Welcome back to OpenLine. We have Representative Mike Stewart with us. We are now talking about guns. He proposed background checks in Tennessee and actually went out and bought a gun, videotaped the whole thing over the internet. So he found it on the internet, went in a parking lot, a supermarket or a store parking lot, and bought the gun, took it into the committee. The committee voted down the bill. So that's what we're talking about. Let's go to Brian. Hello, Brian.
Oh, hey, I'm back. Representative Stewart, you kind of reminds me of Morris Udall or Muskie, but same speech pattern, mannerisms. I don't know if he's...
All right, what is your question?
My question is, how long is these AR-15s? I mean, I'm pushing 50. How long have these things been around? 'Cause I remember the M16, this AR-15, I never even heard about it until like 10 years ago, and all of a sudden they just started popping up. And like you said, they don't look like M16s at all. And when did this whole thing come about? And why did always everybody want those? When I was younger, everybody wanted like a 20-gauge shotgun and maybe a...
All right, so your question is about the actual type of gun. Well, okay, what about that?
Yeah, here's the funny thing. I actually know the answer, and here's why. Because once I was on an airplane flight with a guy from Arizona who makes guns, and he explained it to me. And what it is the M16, you know, came out in the 60s and started being used in Vietnam by the Special Forces, and then they adopted it for everybody because it's real light. It's a very, it's an easy weapon to use. The patents have all run. So sometime, you know, 5-10 years ago, the patents ran on the M16 on the military weapon, and so anybody can now make these weapons. Anybody with a machine shop, there's no patent to it. And so you've got a lot of these weapons being produced. The one I bought is a version that was apparently put together by a gun, you know, by someone who knew about weapons and had, you know, bought a stock in one place and bought the receiver in another place. But the AR-15 is the general term I use for the civilian M16. So it's not full automatic, semi-automatic, but it's got the same basic workings as the military weapon.
All right, let's go to Dorothy. Hello, Dorothy.
Yes, how are you?
Fine. Go right ahead.
Okay, I believe that we do need background checks for the gun shows because that will keep the criminal and the terrorists from getting an ultra gun. Because right now, they're able to buy a whole van load and go out in the street and sell them. And this is not right. Everybody else has to go and abide by the rule, at least get a gun check, because you're letting crazy people have guns that shouldn't have. And that's how come they're having such a mass murders.
Okay, so you support...
They should not be exempt because they're having a gun show. You need some type of background check for an individual if he's going to buy a gun. And an M16, if you shoot an animal with it, it will tear him all to pieces. I'm sure the meat wouldn't be worth to eat.
All right, Dorothy, thank you. All right, I'm going to go to the next call because that's essentially what you have said. Let's go to Dennis. Oh, sorry. Dennis,
yes.
Are you there? Go right ahead.
Yes, my question, is what part of the Second Amendment these politicians don't understand about, hey, infringed. The gun ownership should not be infringed. And the other question I have is, if my memory serves me right, you can't take a gun into the legislature, and it's against the law to have a gun on those premises. So why isn't he arrested, and why isn't the officer who took that gun, because it was not his issued gun, it was a private owner's gun, took it into there? He should be reprimanded, and the guy sitting next to you should be in cuffs.
All right, well, let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think I got answers to all your questions. First of all, on the legislature, I believe that the way the legislative prohibition works, if it's part of our law, is you have to go with an intent to go armed. So it's not just having a weapon, it's an intent to go armed. And so what I did is I went and got a state trooper. Obviously I'm not trying to go armed. He disabled the weapon. So I wasn't walking through the legislature with a weapon that could be fired. it had been disabled for the very purpose of doing that. So that's how we made sure that there weren't any laws violated. But the other thing was, and so the state trooper wasn't carrying a weapon that was armed or even usable. It was basically could have used it as a club, the way it was set up. But the Second Amendment question is a good question, I actually agree with you. I think the Second Amendment, our country is based on individual freedoms. I think the Second Amendment creates a personal, direct right to keep and bear arms. I realize some people argue with that, but I think it does. And I have no problem with a law-abiding citizen purchasing a weapon, purchasing that weapon for that matter. The problem is that, I think that just as all of our other rights come with some level of responsibility, we have free speech, but you can't tell lies about somebody that end up being liable. You can't go out and say somebody's committing a crime when they're not, or they're going to sue you. We have a Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, but when we commit felonies, we lose that Second Amendment right. And so what we're saying here is we need to make sure we sort the people that have lost their Second Amendment rights because they're felons, because they're terrorists, from the law-abiding citizens. Now, sir, if it was 25 years ago and you could show me that a background check would take 3 weeks and it's a huge big ordeal and a big problem, and that's back when these laws were created, I could understand your argument. But now that it's just a flick of a computer, the whole thing would take a few minutes. It's just not that big a burden on a law-abiding citizen. So I think the background checks don't infringe on the Second Amendment. I think the background checks actually sort the people that have kept their rights by good behavior from the people that are the bad guys. So I actually don't think there's a Second Amendment problem.
All right, let's go to Jerry. Hello, Jerry.
Hey, yeah, man, thank you. I had a question and a comment.
Go right ahead.
My question is, I have heard that it is legal to carry a loaded firearm in your vehicle even if you do not have a carry permit. Okay, my comment is America is, we do have a strong and mighty military, but we don't have as many as the Chinese or Russians, but still we have our standing civilian army, and that's why the rest of the world fears us. That's why we don't have the terrorism going on in the United States like they're having in Europe right now. Everybody fears us because our civilians are armed and they're not afraid to use our weapons.
Does that mean, would you be opposed to background checks?
I have to fill out that paper every time I buy a weapon. I don't buy from individuals because you don't know if you're going to get robbed when you go to buy that weapon, or if you're just going to buy a piece of junk that someone throw together.
Right.
Rather buy one made by a reputable manufacturer, and yes, I'll fill out the papers and I'll pay the money and I'll have my weapon registered through the government. That way if it comes up missing, I can report it and they'll look for it, never find it.
Okay, well, all right. We're running out of time. What do you think of that?
Here, that's my point. Look, you're a law-abiding citizen. You have a right to buy a weapon. You haven't committed a felony, or you don't have any felonies on your record. You're not on a terrorist watch list. You're precisely the person. You're an American citizen. Listen, I'm a person. Being an American citizen is a special, blessed class that you're in. We come with inalienable rights that we are entitled to, irrespective of what a set of elected officials think or another. So, I think you do have a right to keep and bear arms. Apparently you're doing it. Good for you. And as you're finding out, that background check is no big deal. I tell you, I actually think...
We're going to take a break. Okay. We're going to take a break. All right, be back right after this.